Hi! Today, I'll be finally building my Ginkgo 65. I probably would have let it sit in my backlog for a bit longer if it wasn't for a viewer request, so thanks for giving me the motivation to build this keyboard. This is the R1 version of the Ginkgo 65, so it's not a review of the ongoing group buy of the Ginkgo 65 Pro. Based on the product page, it doesn't seem like too much has changed other than more color options, a removable blocker, and a removable logo weight. Though in Clackbait's video, they did mention that there is the Swan gasket mounting system available for this round, so this video may not be 100% representative of the experience of the Pro version of the Ginkgo 65. Like I mentioned in the group buy video when this keyboard first went live, I went with a white top with a copper bottom because it just looked super nice in the renders, and I must say that it looks really nice in person as well. I think that the edge design gives the keyboard a bit more flair, which helps it stand out, though I do know that there were people who thought it looked tacky. I personally really enjoy it, but I guess it's a matter of preference. The keyboard kit came with a hot swap PCB with flex cuts as well as a PC plate by default, though there were add-ons being offered like different plate materials as well as a solder PCB if you didn't like the fixed layout. This definitely helped them streamline the process because it meant that they didn't have to individually pack different PCBs and plates into the packaging and would just have to put the extras in the shipping box. Building the keyboard is pretty straightforward if you've done it before, but if not, there is a build guide that was available on the product page, though it is one of the jankier build guides that I've seen. It'll probably do the job, but it could definitely be better. I do hope that this is something that they improve on for the Ginkgo 65 Pro, but if not, you can always open one of the sponsored build streams by various content creators and just follow along. I've occasionally done that myself, especially for the Matrix Me TKL, which also had a very bare bones build guide. For this build, I went with the GOAT TX stabs, which have never failed me so far. They're really just the best stabs available on the market in my opinion, and I've never had to do any modifications other than just lubing them. For switches, I went with the Joinkeys Matcha Linear switches. Most people have probably heard of the popular Invokeys Matcha Latte switches, but I bought this pack before Invokeys came out with the Matcha Latte switches, so I thought I'd use them in this build. These switches were actually meant for the QK65 Stone Age build that I was planning, but I used the Invokey switches in that build instead. They're not bad switches, but I wouldn't recommend them over the Invokeys Matcha Latte switches, which also happen to be cheaper. Speaking of these switches, I actually got them from Prevail Keys, which have now unfortunately gone out of business. It really felt like they were on the rise with the Epsilon switches, Nebula switches, and a collab with Bad Seed Tech, but some poor business decisions made in the earlier days in the founding of the company were just too much to overcome. The keycaps that I chose for this build were the Osumi Dusk. I'll probably switch them out for a black on white set later because I probably want to use the set on another keyboard, but I think that it does look good on the Ginkgo 65. Anyways, without further ado, here's the type test. You can definitely hear the marbly sound, which is indicative of foam being in the build. It's not the foamiest board that I have since that title belongs to the Matrix ME TKL, but it's definitely there. I was actually pretty surprised at how high pitched this board sounds compared to another board that has a decent amount of foam, the QK65. Then again, board acoustics still do play a large part despite the use of foam, so that's probably why they sound so different. For a quick comparison, Here's a short clip of the QK65. The QK65 is louder and has a deeper sound. My QK65 has gold chamfers because it's the special Stone Age edition, but if you have a normal QK65, it does look a lot more plain from the top-down view. It is, however, a decent amount heavier than the Ginkgo 65, so if you prefer a heftier board, the QK65 is probably the better choice. That being said, I actually prefer the typing sound of the Ginkgo 65 over the QK65 because I feel like it sounds less fatiguing, even though I tend to prefer lower pitched keyboards. The Ginkgo 65 isn't high pitched to the point where it sounds uncomfortable to me, and it's also quieter, which would work better in an office setting. In terms of typing feel, there is a decent amount of flex when you press down. It was a bit of a surprise to me because usually foam also reduces the amount of flex, though it's not a consistent amount of flex across the board due to the plate standoffs. Those areas are much stiffer as a result, but the typing feel is still very pleasant. Overall, I think that the Ginkgo 65 is an awesome board. It's not the most budget board as it's been beaten by QWERTY Keys and Mallatrix with their offerings, but it has a nice clean aesthetic and good performance for what you're paying for. The new Ginkgo 65 Pro is slightly more expensive than when I had bought the keyboard at $279 rather than the $250 that I paid, though with their new edition, it does make sense why they had to bump up the price. It does also come with a storage case that we didn't get for R1, so that helps justify the price a little bit more, since that's always a nice inclusion. I have heard that there will apparently be one more batch of the QK65, so if you want a cheaper option and or you prefer the aesthetics of the QWERTY Keys keyboard, that'll probably be a better option for you, though they did mention that it will be quite limited. I hope that this video was useful for folks to get a sense of what they might be getting if they do decide to join in on the Ginkgo 65 Pro. Let me know if you want me to try different switches or amounts of foam, and I'll try to get a type test out as soon as possible.